welcome to this week's episode of the Sartorial Geek Podcast. We have another live episode for you. We were in Dallas, Texas this week at LeakyCon, which is a Harry Potter inspired convention, and we got to talk to one of the people who make that convention happen, which was very cool. So I hope you enjoy the episode, and if you have friends who would enjoy these kinds of nerdy conversations, please feel free to share our podcast with them. If you want to support us, you can leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. And if you want to get cool gifts from us, you can check out our Patreon. It's at Sartorial Geek, and we have all kinds of rewards from the $1 range to the $25 range. So thank you so much. Have a great week and enjoy the episode. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Welcome to the Sartorial Geek Live. This is our second live episode, which is very cool, so thank you for being a part of it. If you don't know me, I'm Jordan Ellis. I run Jordan Dene, which we're actually at a booth here. And then I'm the co-editor of the Sartorial Geek, which is a quarterly magazine and a weekly podcast. And I'm here with Taekia Blackwell, who's the COO of Mischief Management, which is putting on LeakyCon, which is very, very cool. So thank you so much for hanging out and talking to me.
No problem. This is going to be great. I'm excited.
Yeah, so I mean, I actually don't super know the answer to this either. So Mischief Management runs cons,
yes,
but not even just Harry Potter now, all kinds of nerd
cons. Kinds of nerd cons. So this summer we did a Game of Thrones convention, this year. 2019.
Yeah.
Because I'll start in January. We did BroadwayCon in New York, which is amazing and is just this huge celebration of the fans of Broadway. And honestly, we can't believe that no one had this idea before we did.
It's so cool.
But we're glad we got to be the first. So we did BroadwayCon in January. Then we had Con of Thrones, which is our Game of Thrones fan convention, in its second year this year, and that was so much fun. And then we are partnering with A&E on LeakyCon, which is a convention for fans of extraterrestrial and space and the unknown. And that was very recently, about 6 weeks ago in LA. And then we are at LeakyCon.
Yeah.
And so those are our main four. We have another LeakyCon coming up in November in Baltimore. But those are kind of our main four brands right now. But you never know.
And there may be more.
We always
follow Mischief Management to see what's going on.
Absolutely. We always like to joke in our office that you can't leave, you can't go to the bathroom without a new con idea coming up. And that's kind of because we're all fans of a lot of things. And so you get people who are passionate about, Harry Potter or television or, musicals into a room. And you give them this idea, this spark of a moment of like what a convention could look like. And we'll come up with conventions for everything.
That's so cool too, though, because I've been to fan cons. I don't know if you guys have been to a lot of fan cons, and it's very, very hard. You know way more about putting it together than I do. I'm usually just a vendor. But the fact that you guys have successfully put all of these on, and they're good, and they work, and they're going on for years, that's incredible. Because the idea of I want to do a Game of Thrones convention is cool, so does everyone. But the fact that you did it is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we were really, really lucky to kind of cut our teeth with the Harry Potter fandom, and we're all huge Harry Potter nerds at heart. That is the foundation from which we stack everything else. And so we got this chance to work on Leaky and really develop our expertise and meet a lot of great people and build partnerships and kind of create the foundation to do all of these other conventions. Cool. And so by the time we were, thinking about BroadwayCon or doing Con of Thrones, we had already done it so many times. It was a little easier for us to, and each fandom has its own, has its own internal workings, has its own quirks. But it was a little bit easier for us to take what we loved about Leaky and what we had learned about running conventions and apply it across the board. Just making some tweaks here and there. We talk about ravens instead of owls, right. Things like that. But it's been really, really fun to kind of use what we know by being fans ourselves and also by working with fans to create these events, taking what we know about conventions and kind of applying it across the board.
Yeah, I feel like Mischief Shows have a vibe. You can tell, I don't know what exactly it is, but you can tell, it's not like LeakyCon and
we're awesome.
It's either awesome and you focus on the same kinds of things
no matter the fandom. Like, fans come first. You always have, like, a really awesome vendor room and the autograph. Like, I don't know. I feel like all Mischief shows, if you've been to one, you can, like, guess what another one is going to feel like. So if you enjoy them and you're even remotely a fan of the other things, which is really awesome.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is the things that we wouldn't know how not to do.
Right.
So it's we tend to be really, really present. Like, you've probably seen our operations director running around.
Yeah, I don't know the full staff of any other con except for this one. Like, I know everyone that works at Mischief.
And that's because we started this as a community opportunity. We started this as fans. And we, while we were able to build a business through it, it's really just kind of like us hanging out with our friends cool. at its core, and that extends to the X thousand friends we now have on site at LeakyCon. We treat everyone as though they're kind of part of our community, and that piece is, I think, what really shapes the spirit of all Mischief events. We're around. We love the things that we do events about, and we love talking to people about their experience and about the things that we share in common. And so that's one of those pieces that I am not sure we meant to do it, but I think it's something we wouldn't know how not to do.
Yeah, you shouldn't stop. You definitely should not stop. So being COO, like, what does that mean for a convention company? Like, what is your actual job?
I stare at spreadsheets,
okay,
which is good because I love spreadsheets. I'm a Ravenclaw.
Okay, all right. Cool.
So yeah, I spend a lot of time working with our various departments and teams to identify, what their costs are going to be, and sort of make sure that everything's coming in line, and that tracking ticket sales, and working with folks to bring all of their ideas maybe a little bit down to reality.
Fair.
And I do a lot of the business side of things. So outside of, actually running the event, as Mischief grows, we are running a business. And so that means, making sure that everyone gets paid.
Right.
And making sure that, people's healthcare benefits are there, and things like that. That is kind of wild. Like, I started with Mischief. Honestly, I started with Mischief in 2011 as thrown in as a rock star coordinator.
Okay.
So that was when our Marauder passes were called rock stars. And I showed up on site. I was working with the Harry Potter Alliance at the time.
Cool.
And Melissa was like, so our rock star coordinator can't make it. Do you guys have anyone who can help?
Oh my gosh.
I was like, I have no idea what any of this entails, but I guess so.
No way. That's crazy.
And so I jumped in. She gave me like the list of 50 rock stars. and was like, these are the people who paid the most for the tickets. Make them happy, please. And so
that's such an intense day one of your job. Not knowing that's your job until you get there.
Yeah, exactly. And so I worked with them on that and a couple of other projects, and then became the logistics director in 2012. And so going from running events, which is very different than running a business, has been really interesting growth trajectory, and really fun and really great because I used to be the person making sure that there were enough chairs in the room, and now I just make sure that all of those people feel supported in making sure that there are enough chairs
to make sure there are chairs in the room.
To make sure that there are enough chairs in the room. And so it's been kind of a really interesting growth, like personal growth for me, and stepping away from kind of all of the minute details that I used to be steeped in.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Abby and Kylie think I'm a control freak and would love for me to step further away. But it's been a lot of fun, and everyone here really, really cares. And I think that fostering that vibe of still being a group of friends putting something together who are really passionate about it, that's been really important to us as we continue to grow, as we bring on people who had never been to a LeakyCon until they were hired by Mischief.
Whoa, okay.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
And so we have to focus on what does it mean, what is the Mischief difference, what does it mean to how do we in actuality foster the environment that we are trying to, or like how did we get here? What are the pieces that actually like make something engaging and fan focused? Identifying what those are, and it's not easy because it's just something that you've done. It just it feels a little bit like happenstance, and then you start to sit down and try to pull away the pieces and be actually like intentional about how to foster that space. It's been really tricky and fun for us to kind of figure out exactly, okay, but what are the ingredients that we've put into the stew?
Especially when you need to then explain it to someone else, you're like, just do what I've always done. Maybe that's not an actual way to like explain this to anybody.
That's not an answer.
Is it hard to jump back and forth between fandoms? Because like you were saying, you have like 4 at least cons a year and they're all different. So is it hard to be like, okay, ticket sales for Game of Thrones, but also Harry Potter things are next week, but also Broadway we're getting guests for? Like, does your brain go crazy doing that?
A little bit. It's definitely been kind of the trickiest part, I think, honestly, is because we are always working on all events. Our creative director might be I need to brainstorm about what the vision is for Leaky and what are the, signs going to look like and what's my like inspiration. Yeah. And our operations director is like, but actually I need you to talk to me about LeakyCon.
Right.
And it's those pieces that are a little bit more disparate and harder to talk about when you're trying to talk to someone and they're on a different train. And that's when the wizards and the aliens are coming. It's a little bit harder to then be like, okay, I can switch in the middle of my brainstorm to talking about this other thing. And also it's about learning to find the shortcuts without kind of giving up the heart of what it is that we do. One of those has definitely been in language. Like we know what the voice is for when we're communicating about LeakyCon just instinctually at this point. And figuring out the language for Con of Thrones, which is really, really similar, but has, a slightly older audience, a slightly more male audience, figuring out how to talk to them without it sounding a little too lovey-dovey, has been really...
A little too, like, 13-year-old girl, a little more like 30-year-old man. That's a hard shift to switch.
So it's been in those pieces, it's a little bit weirder. So you can't just, copy-paste and change some words around. It's about, like, really being authentic to the fan community that you're creating this event around. Broadway is totally different.
Yes,
and honestly, as like a slightly more mainstream, though Game of Thrones is pretty mainstream, fandom, it spans the gamut. And so, we're talking to a lot more industry professionals because we are also based in New York, and so we're doing a lot more of that kind of space. So it's just that everything is they all kind of flow from the same place, but there are these like little pieces that you have to like change and make adjustments for and figure out exactly how it works in that space. And we always, we come up with new con ideas all of the time. And the first year you run a con, you're really just kind of figuring out what it is.
Yeah, because you can guess so much.
Until you are literally on site, you don't know what the...
Yeah.
You can make all of the plans that you want until you're on site and you can feel the vibe. You're never quite sure if everything that you're putting into it is going to land. Programming is really hard to figure out for a new audience. Whether or not the brand and kind of attendees' expectations are matched can be really hard. Like all of those pieces until you're there and you're like, oh, this is what this, like there's something really tactile about an event and a space with thousands of people. And once you're there, you're like, okay, I understand this in my bones now. I really feel like what this vibe is, what people are looking for, what people have gotten excited about, and you can build off of that. But the first year of a con, you're just kind of guessing.
Well, and something I think is insane that you guys do is you don't even do the cons at the same places. Like I've never seen a con that's like Leaky's in Ireland and then Texas and then Florida and then Boston. Like that's wild.
Yeah,
too.
So much fun.
I can't even imagine because not that people don't travel, but the location of the world you're in affects I imagine a bit.
And actually, it is really fun. It definitely keeps us on our toes, and it keeps us. Sure. And it means that we're able to like reach a new audience every time.
That is cool. Yeah.
And that's really cool. And we kind of like have these pockets of fans and past attendees in all of these different spaces. For Leaky, we've been basically all across the U.S.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of places that we would love to revisit. But yeah, so it's tricky, and you're learning new venues all of the time, and you're developing kind of like a sense of what the foundation is, and then you have to tweak for different audiences and different expectations. Like this Leaky sold out in 2 minutes, which was crazy, but presented a new set of challenges. And so every new place presents a few new quirks for you to figure out and work through, but also a lot of it's the same. And so you can, I know, especially because our content stays the same, I know what a live podcast needs in the room. Yes. I know what, X, Y, or Z thing. I know that Leaky's going to have Wizard Rock. I know that, there are certain things that you just know. They're the big rocks that you can put down, and that's really helpful no matter where we are. And luckily, as we diversify events, I think that we are going to try and, if not the same event in similar spaces, then maybe like rotate events, because now we have 4 events, so we could in theory just kind of like trail the events around the country, and that will
not relearn everything every single show.
Exactly.
Because that's a spirit of adventure that like I don't have. I'm so impressed that you guys do that. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, and I think that there's a skill set in learning quickly, and so we now know. These are the 3 questions that I need to ask as soon as I have a sense of what the venue is, and these are the pieces, and these are the people I should be looking for. Honestly, what's trickiest is like venue to venue, the internal workings aren't always the same. So like they like the way that they communicate with their operations staff might be slightly different than what we're used to. And that can always that takes time. Yeah. That takes talking to someone and realizing, oh, this is not working the way that I thought it was going to. But it's a fun challenge, and we've gotten pretty good at it.
I was going to say, if you can get good at that, then like I feel like you can get good at anything. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I had a question when you were saying you're a Ravenclaw, so you look at spreadsheets all the time. Does the Mischief staff do people's jobs align with their houses pretty well, or not really?
So that's so funny. I've been toying with writing a management book, because I think that there's like definitely a book in managing the Hogwarts
so like
houses.
I run a business and I have a lot of business friends, and like honestly, some of us now, like one of my friends who's a personal trainer, she asked on our intake form, like, what's your house, because that will affect the way we work out. I totally would buy that book and read it. I think that's awesome.
No, I wouldn't say that houses a lot. Okay. I think that people select into roles that fit specific houses. Sense. Like our creative director is a Luna Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
And he makes beautiful things, and he, gets into the nitty-gritty details. But that's not me.
Right.
I am not and our operations director, Abby, is a hat stall between Ravenclaw and Gryffindor, who chose Ravenclaw.
Yeah.
But that makes so much sense when you see the way that she attacks an operational problem with the verve that it takes to get something done, but also the analytical ability that is really needed to handle the millions of details. We have a lot of Gryffindors now.
Yeah. I was going to ask, is there a house that like overpowers?
Yeah, we used to be, and I can't give away all of my management book techniques.
Yeah. Totally.
But we used to be more Ravenclaws, and we are now very heavily weighted to Gryffindor.
Okay.
Which is really fascinating.
Yeah.
Melissa Anelli, our CEO, is a Gryffindor, is a Gryffindor's Gryffindor. And I think that it takes that kind of energy to decide that you want to, make a convention just because you want to.
Yeah.
It takes that kind of energy, honestly, to decide to do 4 conventions in a year, to decide to, do Harry Potter conventions and then like spin off into Broadway. So I think that there's an alignment between people's houses and their roles and how they work and behave. That's really fun, and we make fun of everyone. We use it. It's it's the language that we use to be like, oh, you're doing that because you're a Hufflepuff. Yeah. Our communications director is a Hufflepuff. Our entire help desk team is Hufflepuffs. It's so like it makes a lot of sense.
I was gonna say I'm a Hufflepuff. That makes so much sense to me. Yeah. Do you guys still do house activities and stuff staff-wise? Because I remember there used to be like a walking challenge that was like,
we do.
Do you guys still do that kind of stuff?
Do.
That's really cool.
We have our Fitbit challenge for the
guys, this
convention.
is so fun. Can you explain it? It's so cool.
Okay, so we do it teams and houses, and so everyone has a Fitbit or some sort of pedometer, and every night you send Kylie your steps for the day, and then at the end of the weekend we tally them up using like an average across the houses and departments, and then we basically just kind of like egg each other on. And like for instance, help desk sits a lot, and so they will like take turns pacing. Like they will they'll be like, oh, it's my break, I'm just gonna walk the halls for like 20 minutes. And it's like, why would you do that? And Abby and I used to have a ferocious competition because we were just like, I'm gonna beat you. Even though we are usually on the same team.
I was gonna say, are you guys both in the same team?
But we're very competitive.
That's awesome though.
But so we tally it up. The last time at Leaky Dublin, we thought that Hufflepuff had won, and then we realized that Sierra, our programming director, hadn't submitted her steps. And so it was very
oh wow, that's like
it was very Sorcerer's Stone. It was it had been announced that she walked through the door and she was like, oh, actually, and then it changed. And we were like, she made the call. Yeah. I've never been prouder. Awesome. It was great, but it's a lot of fun. And honestly, it's one of those things where we do like 23,000 steps in a weekend, in a day throughout the weekend. Yeah. And so it's a way to kind of make yourself feel a little better about how much your legs hurt. Yeah, exactly.
That's valid. Exactly. Oh my God. Do you guys do that for your other shows too, or is that a Leaky?
We do, and we do it at house. Cool. We do houses because how else are you going to categorize yourself?
Yeah. How do you guys pick, like, when you're like, oh, I have a great idea for a new convention? How do you pick which ones actually happen and which ones, like, I'm sure there are way more ideas than actual cons you can make.
Yes. It's usually it's one of those things that's hard to pinpoint.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
sure there are a ton of factors that go into it.
Yeah, and there's a burstiness to an idea. It's when someone comes with an idea and everyone looks at each other and it's like, oh God, that's real. Like that could be a thing.
We could do that.
We could do that. And then we started researching kind of what the audience size of the fandom is, what markets would make the most sense for an event like that, cool. What we think, basically like how many people we think we could go to something like that, and whether or not we have a relationship with either agents or participants, actors and things in that industry that we could, parlay into an event. And so it really, a lot of times, the ones that we end up moving forward on, it's that initial moment. Because I think that there are a lot of our instincts have become really, really sharp and really, really good. And if you can get, our creative director, our talent director, our operations director, our programming director, all to agree on something and think that like it could happen, then it probably can happen.
Sign, right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Do you guys have to do cons of fandoms that you are you all fans of all the things? You can't be, right? No one can be.
I've only seen 2 seasons of Game of Thrones.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I did my first Doctor Who convention. I'd only seen one season. And I was like, no one asked me any questions. I don't know anything about this. That's cool. So, like, you just make it work and ask the people on staff who are, like, the super fans. Cool.
We definitely have a couple super fans of everything that we're doing an event for, or really, really strong partners. And we have gotten really good at kind of researching and steeping ourselves in those communities as needed. Sierra did watch all of Game of Thrones.
Just to be ready for it.
Just to be ready until,
That's an intense commitment, too, because that show's a lot. I love it, but it's a lot.
Absolutely. And also, can you imagine, like, being not forced, but, like, having to watch Game of Thrones for your job?
No,
it's very...
I can't. That's really intense. Good job, Sierra.
And so we do a lot of stuff like that. We try and kind of, we'll pick up a podcast about it. We'll pick up, pieces of the fandom to get our fingers in, so that we can have a sense, and not make a fool of ourselves, and honestly be true to the audience. We try to, learn as much about, what a Game of Thrones fan is really looking for, and is really like what pieces, what are the fights that people get in on Twitter, like what are the true pieces of fandom, so that we can replicate and we can be true to that and make it a really authentic and interesting and complex event for them, whether or not we're fans of the thing.
Yeah, that came up on a panel yesterday where it's like, you can tell when a corporation just comes down and is like, I'm doing this thing now, and there's no inside knowledge. They don't get it at all when it's like, like just putting memes on things and nothing makes sense. And you're like, what are you even doing? You don't get this. So that's much appreciated.
Yeah, no, I mean, and there are places, right, like as fans ourselves, as people who are like deep in the Harry Potter fandom, we know that there are places that you look for fandom, right? Yeah. Like, what are the, biggest stories on AO3? Like, what are people using Tumblr? Is that where the Game of Thrones fandom is?
Right.
It might not be.
Out there?
It might not be. What are the fights people are getting into? What are things that, people are really, really care about? We know, like, where to find those things. And so we're able to kind of, harvest from that, and we also have a bunch of Game of Thrones fans that we're friends with that are on our staff, and so we're able to harvest from a lot of that. I don't think that we would be able to do events if we didn't have some sort of hook into them, because it wouldn't be the same kind of vibe that makes a Mischief event, and so I can't think of anything.
No, that makes sense though, because if you don't know anything about Harry Potter culture, you don't know about Wizard Rocks, you wouldn't. But that's like such a huge part of this, or you wouldn't have a Yule Ball. Yeah. But if you don't, not that you have to, but like that's how you know it's actual fans putting stuff on. Yep. Because that's kind of insider knowledge, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys have any questions? Yeah.
I do. So do you have this impending feeling from year to year to try to top the con that you had from the past?
That's a good question.
Not necessarily top. We always want to make it feel new and different. But also we acknowledge that not everyone has been there the year before, and so we don't want to make it feel so new and different that people who have never been feel left behind, or like they missed a piece to get into it, to what the expectation is on site for a Leaky. I will say that sometimes when it comes to the set, we get a little okay, what's the biggest thing we can do? We need a chandelier. And so that piece we really love having fun with. And there are pieces of it that we, if we did something crazy with, I don't know, confetti cannons one year, we're going to look for a different way to do something as exciting. But I think that each of the events are so special in their own way that there's a perspective, there's a piece of this that we could never top, that it exists delicately in this one moment, and you can't do better than how great and that feeling, and so we just want to do it differently and recapture that essence and spirit.
That's differently, but not necessarily you have to think every con is good too. So it's not like last year sucked, this year has to be better. That's a good way to think about it. Does anyone else have more questions?
So,
we have plenty of time, don't worry.
So I saw that, next year you're having 2 LeakyCons and one of them is going to be in Dallas again. So what kind of logistics go into making that kind of decision where you're not moving it from place to place again, but you're not revisiting the same city 2 years in a row, and then you're also going to host 2 LeakyCons, and how do you think that splits the fan base?
That is a great question. So with Dallas, it was based on the demand of the ticket sale. We feel like there were a lot of people who wanted to come this year and weren't able to. And we kind of sat around and were like, there are pieces, we're so focused on community building and wanting to create a special place for all Harry Potter fans so that honestly, some of our conversations sound very Hufflepuff. And so I think that a piece so just the decision to stay in Dallas happened or started really early when we were like, oh God, what do we do? And so that a lot of that came from the demand and wanting to be able to bring in, as many Harry Potter fans as we could. And also, we hope that everyone has a fantastic experience this weekend. And I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of people who, we got a lot of the Dallas audience had never been to a LeakyCon, and I think that some of that was, based in because we'd been, almost everywhere, but this area
middle
of the country,
part of the country,
this middle part. Well, we did Chicago, but not.
Oh yeah, much farther north though.
Yes. So we hadn't been in the Southwest, and so we were kind of felt like, okay, well, let's do it again. Let's see how this one goes. We will at least get the people who didn't have a chance to come to this one, which is our heartbreak is people who want to come and can't, because we can't set capacity. There are only so many seats in a room, but it's so that's how that decision got made. And then Boston is because it's our 10th anniversary next year, and our first event was in Boston, and so this year was a little bit easier to make decisions. But we had honestly before we sold this Dallas, we'd been talking about Boston. We'd been talking about, how crazy and how much Mischief, and which wasn't a company in 2009, and how much LeakyCon had changed and wanting to go back and wanting to recapture that. Also, we haven't been in the Northeast since Boston.
Yeah, I know, because I was waiting for an easy drive and I haven't gotten one yet. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, so we were really excited to serve that community that was built, and honestly a lot of people from Boston have followed us to different places, but we were really excited for the opportunity to go back to where it all started, cool. and celebrate 10 years of Mischief, LeakyCon, I guess, there in that moment.
That's so awesome.
So I'm trying to think of how I can articulate this where it's not all over the place. I'm really curious about how you manage / develop a really good set of vendors and artists, especially when you are, say, trying to develop a new concept like Broadway, where it isn't just one fandom, or the Alien Con. I'm just curious, how do you find the right vendors, or do they find you, where you aren't getting those people who are just some corporate entity that are stamping Broadway stuff on a bunch of stuff to just sell?
Yeah,
because you guys never have the t-shirt towers that are just we sell in Hot Topic and also at this convention. We brought our whole mall with us, which is nice.
Yeah, so BroadwayCon is actually a really interesting way into this because we're balancing the industry professional side of things with also the fan created wares and things like that. And so we do a lot of outreach and a lot of conversations and a lot of research with each of our, not necessarily all of our vendors, but anyone who seems on the fence and we're not sure about, we definitely we'll jump on a call, ask for more information about, what they're selling, and just kind of do our own research into anyone who reaches out to us. We do a ton of outreach. We go to shows, we will go to New York Comic Con and hand out business cards and try to see kind of if there's anyone that we think will fit or vibe. And we also have through our programming having a lot of connections with like Broadway shows and things like that. And so we talked to a lot of those folks about coming into the marketplace and figuring out, the best way to reach the fans that way.
BroadwayCon had a really cool thing because like when you go to a Broadway show and they have their little cart, there were a bunch of shows that just like brought their cart to the con, which was awesome. Yeah, so like the show's vendors were actually there, which is really cool.
Yeah, and so that was honestly something we'd been working on for years.
Yeah,
because it takes the first time you do anything.
Yeah, seriously.
We are figuring it out, and also that community, whether it's Broadway or Game of Thrones fans or anyone, is figuring out us.
Yeah.
And kind of like, okay, what is this that's happening? And so we'd been talking to shows for a while, and then finally last year, this year, God.
Yeah, it feels like a year ago. Oh my God.
It feels like lifetimes ago. But this year we're able to get a bunch of shows in, and so it's honestly, we take everything like really personally, and we talk to a lot of people. We do a lot of research. We try really hard to have the right mix of folks in our marketplace because we want the vendors to do well, and we want our audience to enjoy going into the space and like find really cool things. Like all of Jordan's t-shirts.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the best marketplaces I've ever been to. Like, I spent so much money this week. But it's cool, too. Like, I mean, from a vendor perspective, you guys do a really good job. When you have that many people on staff, if you're fans of companies, then, like, you find out, like, you see the same companies, you're like, oh, you fit in this con, you'll fit in this con, too, come to this. Or, like, you just end up kind of getting to know all the, like, nerdy Etsy shop. Like you shop there and then you're like, hey, do you want to come to my con?
Because I already put everyone next to each other.
Yeah, so this one has been cool for me because so many of my friends are here. Like so many of my seller friends, like we're all just hanging out and I get to buy all their stuff, which is bad for my wallet, but awesome for the show.
Yeah, and that's the kind of being present piece.
Yeah.
Is that like Kylie sits down with the map and is like, oh, all of these people know each other. They talk when they're at our events. Let's put them all next to each other.
Which is so nice. Like someone is watching my booth right now, which is great.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess you could not do that, but why when you can?
Well, and then the marketplace has a good flow too. Like it's not like you have like random goth t-shirts next to like kawaii pillowcases. You know what I mean? Like it looks, you walk down the aisles and it's super intentional, which is great. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time and energy like trying to make things feel right and fit. Like a lot of that, I mean, and that's kind of like human-centric design, like across everything. We try to, make all of our like signs and rooms and things like really fit the theme, and we try to make the marketplace flow as well as possible and use all of our space as effectively as possible, mostly because like in some cases we've had bad situations where it didn't work out, and also it seems it makes the most sense, and honestly we want to keep everyone happy. The goal is everybody is happy. And so a lot of those pieces just kind of make it a more enjoyable experience for everyone involved.
It's cool too. Like this is actually my first Leaky. I squealed when I saw like the vendor, what are those called? The like fabric behind us?
The pipe and drape.
The colors. Yeah, the pipe and drape. I was like, I've never seen 4 colors in one booth before. This is awesome.
Yeah, that went through a lot of iterations.
I'm sure.
There was one version where Jordan wanted to do them like kind of like in a chevron.
There was another Jordan. I was like, what are you talking about?
Sorry.
Yeah. No,
our creative director's name is Jordan, and he wanted to do them kind of like in a chevron, so like there would be like black on the outside and the colors would kind of like go in, and that was like, okay, that's like 30 panels.
That's too much. Maybe we can't do that.
that's too much. But doing this sort of thing, and a lot of our other events, Con of Thrones, we've started playing with that and kind of the feel of the marketplace to make it feel a little bit more thematic. And so there's a lot of color things happening, which it's so fun. Cool. I wasn't sold on it, can I tell you? I
walked in and I was like, how does this work? This should look crazy.
Yeah.
I believe you.
No, I walked in on Wednesday when they were setting up, and I was like,
this is not so.
But then once everyone, all the booths started building up, I was like, oh, this is great. This is so Harry Potter.
Yeah. I'm glad too that you didn't just give each booth one color, because like, how much does that suck if you're a Hufflepuff company? Like a Slytherin booth. I feel like people would actually be mad about that. So you did the right thing. Another thing that's cool too is that your pricing for booths is really like reasonable. So
That's good.
yeah. Like, it's still obviously you have to pay your bills, but you can tell when a show is very expensive because then only like super big companies can go. And then a show like this, if you have 2 or 3 like fun crafting buddies sharing a booth, like, it's super affordable. It's not stressful on like the seller's end, and then you get cool stuff that you don't see often. Like, if you walk through like a huge con that has, 100 or 100,000 people, you're not gonna get like handmade headbands and scarves and stuff there, because that's just not possible. So I think that adds a level of like diversity to vendor floors that's really cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. And honestly, I mean, that it all comes back to us being super present.
Yeah.
That, like, we know the vendors, and it means that, like, I would feel bad gouging.
Right.
Like,
you
in general.
This is what it costs you. You're not like, I'm going to charge $500 extra. Or like, you don't get a table and chairs. Sorry, bring them yourself. Because that stuff sucks.
Yeah.
And it's very nice that you don't do that.
Yeah, so we try to, we obviously, want to pay for this all.
Yeah.
And so we try to have our prices be as reasonable as possible. And I mean, and that goes with like ticket prices too. Like and also we don't want to make it so, like, make the barrier to entry so high that we only are getting the same type of person at this event. We want it to be, open and inclusive and welcoming. And like, I recognize that, like, honestly, like, being a Harry Potter, like, this is probably your consumerist
Yeah, this is what we're talking about.
But like, being a Harry Potter fan, there's a little bit of a barrier to entry, right? Yep. Like, you have to buy the books, you have to go buy the movies, right? You have to, like,
if you want to go to an event, you have to pay and fly. Like,
the experience of going to the parks, like, it is a commercial entity, and there is a lot. It's like expensive.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. I mean, obviously, like, events are very expensive. So we are, covering, all it takes to do this. But we don't want to make it so that people who, have never gone to a con can't come to Leaky. And so we have played for years with, like, what's the right ticket price so that we aren't, shooting ourselves in the foot. But are making it as accessible as possible. And like, luckily we were able to do day passes a lot. And I feel like that's the perfect middle ground where, like, a $50 day pass, I would spend that like very easily. And you get kind of the feel, and maybe, in future years you're able to come for the full weekend or things like that. But that has been one of those things that we've talked about for years, like back and forth to kind of figure out exactly the right thing. Also, the auto photo, we only started doing pay auto photo in last year, and that was another thing that we talked about for years to figure out exactly how that works and how to make it so that we aren't being exclusive, and making it so that people who come here feel like they have a full and whole experience with the convention, but also we could pay for it.
Well, I feel like even the fact that to get everyone in Dallas, for example, who couldn't come this year, instead of being like, cool, we'll double ticket prices next year so we won't have this problem, you're just doing it here twice again. Like, I feel like that says a lot about your company, that you're finding ways to solve the problems that aren't just like, only people who have a ton of money can do this. Sorry, everyone.
That would suck. I would not be that person.
But a lot of cons go that way. Like, they start as cool fan cons, and then you watch them grow, and then you watch them get completely inaccessible, and then that's it. And fans don't love it anymore. So,
well, we want fans to love it forever.
Right. Do you guys have any more questions? Yeah.
So one thing that's really cool about LeakyCon that we were looking through, because we go to a lot of Comic-Cons with my group of friends, is how many panels y'all have.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Can we talk about how many panels we have?
So how do y'all manage that, and how do y'all decide who gets a panel, what the panel topics are? How does that process look for y'all?
This year was a record.
Of number of panels?
Of number of panels.
Wow, cool.
This year was a record. And part of that is because we set our capacity based on who can fit in the room. So we got to have something good going on in every room all the time.
Yeah.
And that is tricky.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we implemented this year is like replicating panels. So there are a couple of things like the Hufflepuff meetup happened 3 times.
Oh, cool. That's smart.
And so...
Yeah, it was full 3 times. That's crazy. Cool.
And so, if you didn't get a chance to go, so we started like doing some of that, which really helps cut down on kind of the volume of content that we need. We also do. Luckily, we've all been at this for, a very long time. And like, I am the COO of Mischief Management. I'm also on the board of directors of the Harry Potter Alliance. I can talk about Harry Potter.
Right.
And so we have like a lot of our staff have a significant level of expertise. And so we're able to throw them at panels. We have a deep bench when it comes to Harry Potter fans. We have really great relationships with like the Wizard Rockers and organizations and folks that just, like talk about Harry Potter all the time. And so we've been really, really lucky to be able to pull them in, come up with an idea of a panel or something that like we have brainstormed and then just throw people at it. We do user gen, so people can apply to lead a session, and that I think covered like 30% of our panels this year.
Yeah.
And a lot of the user gen folks are people who have been doing this with us for a very long time. And so we know, that when someone submits the like how to leaky panel,
right,
that exactly what it's going to look like and how it's going to run. And that is just,
and you know that person because they've been
here. And we know
that
person.
Know people, which is cool.
And we know that person. And so we know how the panel is going to feel and look. And so a lot of it is like the user gen side, especially, is just, we've been doing this for so long that we've kind of like built up a database of, these are all the things. We also are Harry Potter fans first and foremost, and so we sit around a lot and we're just like, okay, well, what about this idea? What about this? What do you think? What was Remus doing in the 12 years, right? Like we just sit around and kind of brainstorm ideas, and from those Sierra is able to like pull one, write a topic, write a title, write the description, and go from there. We use a lot of different programs and processes to keep all of the information straight. All of our presenters and panelists and guests, we like throw in spreadsheets and kind of make sure that we aren't double booking people, which is
that's gotta be one of the hardest things to figure out.
Yeah, when you're talking like 12 panels, so many hours in a day, you're making sure that no one's double booked and everything's going kind of right, and people have lunch breaks and people, and no one's on back-to-back panels, and so they're not getting like exhausted and tired of talking. Like those are the pieces that actually like really make the schedule. Coming up with the ideas is the easy part.
I was gonna say, if you read through the programming list, it feels like you're having a sleepover with your Harry Potter friends, and it's like, well, these are all the weird things you can just say, and then we can talk about it with our friend, which is awesome. Yes. That's super cool.
Yes, absolutely. I hope does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
We used to have someone Thursday with like opening ceremony and concert stuff. Is that going away, or was that just like a space restriction? So we honestly, it's probably going away. Thursdays have been really hard because that's when, like, logistically challenging, because that's when everyone arrives. And so what you're honestly, like, from a logistics perspective, you're really extending the event to Wednesday. And then you start taking over too much of people's time and availability and space. So like for when we did like Thursday night openings and concerts and stuff on Thursday nights, we had to fly in all of the rockers on Wednesday.
A whole extra day, right?
Yeah, like you're asking people for a whole extra day. And not that they weren't like really happy to do it, but it's taxing and it's a lot. And
plus that adds 25% to your cost too.
It does add 25%.
Hotel rooms and all of that.
Exactly. And it takes people away from whatever they're doing in their quote unquote real lives.
Their muggle lives.
Their muggle lives. And so we made the change to be a little bit more lean, and that's why we used to do like pretty like late on Thursday and then early Friday, Saturday, and then we'd end kind of midday on Sunday. And so we basically adjusted it so that we are ending at like 6 or so today, and we took away the like Thursday evening stuff. It does mean we end up like putting all the rockers in one giant concert, which is really fun, but also exhausting and went real late this year.
Seriously.
And so it's those kind of tweaks that we're constantly trying to figure out like what makes the most sense. But yeah, so I don't think that the Thursdays are coming back, but I've been wrong before.
It does make sense, like logistics. I mean, when you add one night of a hotel room, that changes your budget a lot. So I totally get it. Anyone else? Yeah.
Are there any plans in the future for a closed con here in the Dallas area?
We did do it in Dallas this year. We were over at the Hyatt Regency. I am not sure where we will be in the next few years. Well, I know where we're going to be next year. I'm just not allowed to say, but I am not sure where we're going to be.
Is that a traveling?
That's a travel.
It was
Nashville last year.
Cool.
Jumping around.
Cool.
That was my bad. I didn't tell her about that.
Oh, no.
That's okay. Well, there will be more chances.
There will.
We can make a trip out of it.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out. If you want to listen to this again or like share it with your friends, it'll be at Sartorial Geek at any podcast thing you want to look up. And then do you have a personal like thing people should follow, or is it just kind of
follow Mischief?
Okay.
I need to work on my personal brand.
I mean, you don't have to, so that's fine. So yeah, follow Mischief everywhere and you get all the news. Mm-hmm. Cool. All
right. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. That was fun.
Thanks for doing this.
No problem.